In all the examples we looked so far, we were passing the parameters by position. So our actual and formal parameters were mapped based on the order we passed the actual parameters to the procedure or the function. For example, here is a procedure update EMP which has 4 parameters. PEMPID and PDPDID are in parameters, PLocation is out parameter, and PStatus is in out type. We're not showing the body here. Now in this anonymous block, we have 4 actual parameters: LEMPID, LDPDID, LLocation, and LStatus, their data type matching the corresponding formal parameters. In the update EMP procedure, we are passing them in sequence: LEMPID corresponding to PEMPID, LDPDID corresponding to PDPDID, LLocation corresponding to PLocation, and LStatus corresponding to PStatus. Passing the parameters this way keeps our code compact with no mappings to be defined. The other advantage of this approach is that it is not affected by the changes in the name of the formal parameters as long as the order stays the same. So the client code does not have to be rewritten in this situation. The drawback of this approach is that the readability of the code is not very good. We are relying on good names for actual parameters to help us figure out what parameter was passed in. Secondly, if the order of the formal parameters change, that will cause our code to break and we will have to update all our client calls to reflect the new order. The other style of passing parameters is by name, where in our client call we map the formal parameters to the actual parameter. This approach is definitely more verbose, but it also helps with the readability as it clearly tells us the mapping with no ambiguity. Also, another advantage of this approach is that if you reposition the formal parameters, the client code need not change. Notice here the order of passing the parameters is not important as the mapping resolves the association. Here we are passing, for instance, PLocation as the first parameter, which is third in the list of parameters. Also, if you add more parameters for your procedure or your function later, and as long as they have default values, you need not change your client code. These new default value parameters can have any position in the list. We will talk about default values shortly. The drawback of this approach is that if the names of the formal parameters are changed, then you have to change the client code to reflect the new names. Oracle allows you to have mixed notations too. So you can mix positional with named as long as the parameters in the beginning are positional. So here in this code snippet, LEMPID is passed by position for PEMPID and LDPTID is passed by position for PDPTID. PStatus and PLocation are passed by name notations being mapped to LStatus and LLocation. You cannot have named notations first followed by positional notation. If you try and do this, Oracle will give you an error PLS 00312, a positional parameter association may not follow a named association. Whether you should use named or positional or mixed notation has no effect in the performance or how the code will process. It is purely a matter of style. Generally, I like passing the parameters by position as this keeps my code compact. If there are too many parameters, then I like to switch to name notation to help with the readability. I always like to keep the parameters with default values at the end, as this gives me the flexibility to use named or positional notation as we will see next.